Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. Really excited to be talking about this. This is thoughts on Amazon's HQ2. It's all over the news right now. It's likely going to go down as one of the biggest decisions made by the biggest company, one of the biggest companies in the world. And it's a major economic decision for the areas that Amazon's moving into. And this is huge news, and it's huge to talk about. So we're going to unpack it in its nuance for you. So again, this is not about it being good or bad. This is about the nuance, the multivariability. There's so many variables, trillions of them to talk about. So this is not a binary concept. Get that in our souls. Not binary. Okay. So moving into this, we have now seen Amazon turn into what it's become over the last 20 years. Going from just being books and selling those books and moving them through an online e-commerce platform that could host as many books as you want instead of the limited amount of books in a bookstore, to now selling home and kitchen, to selling toys and games, to selling things in healthcare, to selling all different types of stuff, and being a massive trillion-dollar company that bought Whole Foods, that has Amazon Web Services, that has Amazon Prime, that has third parties selling goods through it. Is absolutely nuts how large this is. The only other thing that competes with Amazon on the planet is Alibaba. And Alibaba is like the Amazon of China and of Asia, distributing goods there. And soon to be also distributing goods to Africa. That is a separate conversation, and we will need to do some thoughts on the China-Africa relationship soon, but that is one of the growing economic markets in the world. So let's unpack some of the nuance of what has happened. So I want to show you the locations that were decided on for Amazon's HQ2. This is kind of interesting because as Amazon's growing and becoming this massive behemoth of a company, they have the privilege of saying 13 months ago, they said, all right, we're going to pick HQ2. So what happened was a bunch of cities, 238 cities, decided to submit tax incentives, cash incentives for Amazon to pick their city as the city to host HQ2 in. And it's very interesting that it's basically the top of the socioeconomic strata, Jeff Bezos and Amazon, basically having all of these cities across the United States be like, please, please, please pick us. We want the thousands of jobs. We want the billions of dollars of incentives. And then for them to basically have all of these options, this massive pool of ideas from these different cities about where they would want the HQ to go, why they would want it to go there, how they would structure the economic incentive plans and economic development plans in those areas. So now Amazon has this pool of 238 applications for how to develop these cities, which is, again, it's genius to be able to, you're basically crowdsourcing the most innovative plans across the United States. Again, this is very much so like an X Prize model of crowdsourcing the brilliance into trying to find the best ideas. Now, there has been a lot of criticism for the decision that was made, because the decision that was made was to put it in New York and Washington, D.C., New York City, Washington, D.C. Now, when you put it in these two already major hubs on Earth, in the US, what it's saying is that these other sort of cities, such as maybe Denver or Dallas or Chicago or wherever else, was just not as important as these other cities, which is how some people are taking it. And I think it's important to recognize that Amazon's not going to come to my hometown of Sioux Falls, South Dakota to build HQ2. That's not in their best interest. They're not going to build it there to try and make that economy bigger, rather than go to New York City, go to DC, where there are already a tremendous amount of intellectual nodes there. Diverse intellectual people from around the world live there already, And they can hire the smartest people to work at HQ2, such as their pushes in artificial intelligence. But also, now I want to make a distinction. There's a difference between a warehouse employee for Amazon and a difference between a headquarter employee for Amazon. When you're a headquarter employee for Amazon, you're working at this HQ2, you're an artificial intelligence scientist, you're a programmer, you're a designer. These are the people that operations specialists that live there that try and refine the supply chain, all that type of stuff. They work at the headquarters. They get paid $100,000, $200,000 a year. These are the best of the best in terms of what their abilities are. Versus when you work at a warehouse, and this is your classic, like these are your classic warehouse photos. Here's a photo of one of their distribution centers, and this is them going absolutely nuts with robotics and with the proper equipment and mechanisms that make it easy for them to distribute goods at the scale that they do. And here's another, photo. These guys in this photo are not getting paid $100,000 or $200,000 a year. The guys in this photo are getting paid somewhere around $30,000 a year, about $15 an hour across the United States. It's somewhere around the average. And so when it comes to the distinction between those two, I think it becomes more and more important for us to understand that they're picking to move to these locations in one of the variables because of the high density of very smart people that already live in these areas. They want to turn Washington, D.C. into a major hub. They want to turn New York City continue turning New York City into a major hub and D.C. into major hubs. And that's why they're doing this East Coast, West Coast dominance in the United States. And that's becoming a reoccurring theme in many lights. So I have a bunch of interesting information that I want to drop us as we go. The Economist and other sources have been trying to parse as many sources as possible and synthesize information down into this relatable substrate for as many people as possible. It's somewhere around 44 cents of every dollar spent online in the United States is spent on Amazon. Amazon's crushing it due to their speed and convenience, their vast network of warehouses and logistics, and automation. So there's about 125,000 full-time Amazon employees in the United States, 75 fulfillment centers, and then there's 500,000 Amazon employees worldwide, and this includes things like stowers, pickers, and packers. So stowers is the people that go and store the supplies when they're running out and stock the supplies. Pickers are the people that go and get the notification and say that, okay, I got to go get this thing. Then they go grab the thing and give it to the packers, which then go and package the thing. Pickers are crazy because they can collect up to 1,000 items and walk up to 15 miles per shift. Now, when I read these numbers, I think about, okay, this is a hard job. This is a lot of work. Working in an Amazon warehouse can be a decent, it's not necessarily the most creative work. You're not making new ideas and making new designs, but what you're definitely doing is you're working quite hard on being able to do this. So do they deserve to get paid well? Everyone deserves to get themselves paid and themselves to be more actualized, their families to be taken care of. How do we do that with the largest companies in the world? We haven't figured out the exact way to calculate all the variables and figure it out, but this is at least the conversation around what's going on. Half of the employees that work at the fulfillment centers are under the age of 35 and earn about $30,000 a year, about $14 an hour. And many people have been quoted saying that these are the locations that are being left behind. So Amazon's going into some of these places that are left behind and building fulfillment centers and therefore increasing jobs. I mean, hundreds, thousands of jobs in these specific economically developing the economies in the areas that many have said are left behind with people moving out to the coast. So a quick breakdown on revenue. A lot of people think that Amazon Web Services is a major component of the revenue. It's less than 10% of the company's revenue, about 9% or so, whereas 67% comes from retail sales and 17% comes from third-party retail sales. Prime's about 5%. So it's crazy because Amazon's looking to be making around $200 billion a year in revenue, which is absolutely nuts. It's so much money, and that comes out to about $500 million a day in revenue. It's crazy, and a lot of people have said that, the reason why, one of the major reasons why also is because of customer service, because of just how well they treat people in terms of the people that are purchasing their products and services. So I wanna make this really clear that I have I I want to immerse us into the shoes of what it would be like to be Jeff Bezos and the people that are getting to choose where to put HQ2. Because really, when you get these applications from these 238 cities and you're sitting there and you're looking through this idea list and you're getting to pick, isn't it also interesting that at any point they can say, let's say 9 months in, they say, let's do it in New York and DC. That's our final decision. At that point, before they release that information to the public, they can go and spend 4 months of time looking and buying the properties in that area. They can go and start investing private money with insider information into these different hubs before the public even knows about it. So this is how money makes money. Rich get richer. And that is how, in many ways, information and knowledge around what's going on with the largest companies in the world and what they're doing is a huge key for you to also go and make money in that sense. So this is a big deal between the haves and have-nots. You either have the knowledge of where Amazon's going or you don't have the knowledge of where Amazon's going. Now, one may say, well, how do you know that they went and surveyed the land and invested in the properties and did all that? I'm not saying I know. I'm hypothesizing that this happened, and I'm saying it's much more likely that this happened than they just said, oh, okay, New York and DC, and Tennessee for Nashville. And then just announced it to the public the next day and didn't do any investing and curating into those areas ahead of time. So all food for thought around how the money makes money in so many ways, and that knowledge is so incredibly important for you as you move into the world and try and figure out, oh, where should I position myself? Well, you should position yourself where the freaking knowledge is, because that's what's going to help you move forward. All right. So if we can actually have maybe a log, we could find some objective information about this of what property was purchased by what groups in the last 13 months in DC, in Long Island, in Crystal City, in Long Island City, and in Nashville, those 3 places. If you could find a log of the last 13 months of properties purchased there and real estate purchased there, then you would have a more objective understanding of what's actually going on. And I would challenge us to be able to figure that out. So I do say that this is some of the best talent and some of the best ideas to split it rather than concentrating it in just New York or DC. To split it like this and add some in Tennessee as well, I think is a very interesting idea. There's going to be tens of thousands of jobs in economic development that comes up, tremendous economic opportunity. And so there have been some critics, and I'm going to talk about the economic development a little bit. So there's been some people that have said, amazing, amazing, you know, New York City's already excited to increase the subway routes and the bus routes and the tunnel systems and the metro area transit systems, like amazing, amazing, that's going to be great. And Amazon could, again, this is a could be, Amazon could really help with libraries, and they could help with universities. They could commit resources to things like affordable housing in the areas. This is totally true, but this is a could be for now. This is not a fact yet. So we hope this is what's going to happen with the economic development. So that we are very sure, though, of certain things, which are that there's going to be more condo buildings built in those areas. There are going to be higher standards of living in those areas. What is a standard of living based on spirituality or happiness? Or is a standard of living based on the amount of money that you earn and then the amount of money that you contribute to your local economy? How are we crunching these variables? So there is something very interesting about the contribution to local businesses. If you go into Long Island City or Crystal City in Virginia, and let's say that you start living there and working at the Amazon headquarters. Again, much different than the Amazon warehouse. So you make $100,000 a year. Now remember that you're going to eat at the cafeteria every single day for lunch. 5 meals out of your day, you're going to be eating, and potentially 10 meals of your day, because you're also going to be eating dinner there. So that means that 10 meals potentially every single day you are going to be eating at Amazon. That means those 10 meals are not going to be spent at the Crystal City or at Long Island City businesses. And these are the things that are being promised. But guess what? When you need to buy a hammer, when you need to buy a pair of jeans, when you need to buy some socks, when you need to buy some laundry detergent, all this kind of stuff, you have to shop at the local businesses in those areas. So is there going to be economic stimulus? Absolutely, yes. Will it necessarily be by food? Not the 10 meals per week that they're going to be eating the 5 days, Monday through Friday. So the food is likely sourced from local vendors in the area and whatnot, at least some portion of it is. So at least there is that. There is potentially some food contribution in that sense. So now here are some of the things that, that skeptics have said. And I agree with these points. These points are extremely valid points. The fact that there is going to be a significant amount of displacement. When you go and put up these big condos in the areas that are going to be $3,000, $4,000 a month in rent in these different places, that you are going to have people that can no longer afford the housing that they've lived in for decades. Because those housing prices are going to increase. Landlords, if they don't have rent control, if the tenants don't have land control, landlords can increase the prices and that the tenants can no longer afford. So if a single bedroom in these areas is now $2,000 a month or more, we're going to have significant displacement. These people aren't making $100,000 a year. They're making 10 bucks an hour, 12, 15 bucks an hour in these areas. So they can't afford these drastic rent increases that are occurring in their areas due to headquarters moving in. We have to remember that. That's a really important thing to remember. The other things that have been, that have not yet been completely promised are things like, will Amazon hire locally? So will they actually hire in these areas, or will they have people fly in from around the world to work at these places? Also, what are the jobs that will be hired for if they do hire locally? How much will those employees get paid, and what will those benefits actually be? So these are the pressing questions that we actually need to ask to know about the actual development of the communities in the areas that Amazon's moving into. I want to know more about the actual economic calculation of providing Amazon with these hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and tax benefits, because it's kind of interesting when you think about it. If you give a company so many millions of dollars in tax benefits and cash benefits for them to come to build their headquarters in your area, over a period of 5, 10, 20 years, likely after that long, yes, your economy will have made that money back. What about how happy people are? What about how spiritually inclined people are? What about how strong the communities are? We don't measure these variables. These are very difficult variables to actually measure. And so if we were to start measuring that, what would moving a headquarter into a community do? Would it increase the love in the community and the standard of living? Would it decrease it? How do we know these things? How do we measure these variables? So I'm very interested in that. Again, this disparity amongst the economic shifts that are going on our planet is something that we must talk about, where we have a single $1 trillion company deciding we're going to move headquarters in this location, the economies there explode, and then other economies and people are potentially left behind. That this needs to be a global conversation about what we're doing with wealth inequality across the world. We talk about that so much. Last point, as we come to a close, we have to remember what's happened in San Francisco very recently. There was a proposition, Prop C, to figure out how to take businesses that are making so many billions of dollars every single year in revenue and tax them so that we can help figure out the homeless crisis that we have in San Francisco and in New York and all these different places. And so Mark Benioff was a major proponent of Prop C, whereas Jack Dorsey from Twitter was majorly against it. There were several tech CEOs that were very against Prop C. And I don't know enough about the nuance of the proposition, but what I can say is that Mark Benioff has now invested into the Children's Hospital in San Francisco. He's been a major advocate for philanthropy. He's a huge philanthropist himself. Mark Zuckerberg himself is also a huge philanthropist in many ways, part of the Giving Pledge. And it's just very strange to me that out of the supposed 70 billionaires in the San Francisco Bay Area, 70 billionaires here, why is it just Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Benioff that are so avidly philanthropists? What's going on? Why does Mark Benioff he literally called billionaires out for hoarding their money, is what he said. What meaning and fulfillment do you get in life from having a third yacht, or from having a third car, or having a third home? What does that do for you when you're in your empty mansion on a Sunday night? What does it do for you when you invest into artists? 30,000 artists, giving them each $1,000 or $10,000. What would that do for you? What would that do for the world? How much more meaning would that give your soul? We have to figure out what we're going to do moving forward, because issues like this are arising now where tech giants are coming to major cities and they're flourishing the economies, but what are they doing about the crisis of the community and the crisis of homelessness that's going on in those areas, and the crisis of displacement that comes from that? How can we find the right balance and right equilibrium with what's going on with that? We desperately want to figure that out here on Simulation, and that's why we unpack the nuance of what goes on. Join us in unpacking the nuance of these conversations. The Amazon's HQ2 is just one of so many things that we unpack the nuance on this show. We need your help. Help stop having binary conversations. These are not yes or no's. These are not black or white. These are nuanced. There's trillions of variables to calculate at the same time and to figure out what's the best solution moving forward. When you hold just your perspective, just your lens on something, you lose what it looks like to have the lens of someone that's poor or middle class or rich. You lose the lens of looking at it from someone that's black or someone that's Asian or someone that's white. You lose the lens of looking at it from someone that's old or someone that's young or someone that's middle-aged. Remember how many perspectives there are on every single issue, and try and absorb as many of them as possible to get as close to the truth as possible. Join us in this movement for nuance to rebirth the public intellectual. We greatly appreciate you tuning in. Let us know your thoughts below in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And please join us. We need to scale and continue impacting. The Patreon and cryptocurrency links are below. Please join us in this movement. Thank you, Ron, our producer and director. Much love to you. Much love to Sarah for joining us in this session as well as assistant. Thank you. Huge thank you. Much love, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Peace.